So we started to use this technology, and now we have it installed in hospitals. We got leaders around the world. We just performed 600 scientific case studies on 200 leaders, and it only took us 90 seconds. And this is the big transformation for better health.
Gotcha. Well, I know that the technology can uncover hidden patterns and identify old unresolved memories, and you've just given an example of that. Now, Rise and Thrive listeners, I have also taken the 90-second, it's not really a test, it's an exercise that you do, and we'll have the link in the show notes as well so you can access it. That's all right, isn't it, Daniel? People want to access that and get the results as well?
Mind report, yes.
So I'm a little excited and a little nervous about what my voice revealed about my emotional landscape, but I'm also very intrigued. So what did it show, Daniel?
Okay, we say we have onion layer mentality, and we're going to peel off those layers. Yep. When I took this technology to real estate, I got a leader to use it. Now, he was earning $600,000 a year. And he said, Daniel, I want to learn more. I said, why do you want to learn more? He said, because I want to earn more. Anyway, he did the report and his income went up to $1 million. Now, I'm not saying that the report made him $1 million. He just learned more about himself so he could tap into more of his greatness. However, one of his colleagues wanted to try the technology, but he was afraid of what he was going to learn. And I think all of us are afraid of the unknown. We're afraid of what we don't know. However, when you do something like this, all we say is just have an open mind. And these insights that you'll get about yourself aren't things that you're going to necessarily know consciously. They're deep subconscious. These are patterns of behavior that have been imprinted into our DNA, and we're getting to see it for the very first time. So I'll take you through your report today. We're going to look at 3 things. We're going to look at the type of stress that's impacting you at the moment. And the reason why I say is at the moment.
How does it know about my kids?
Changes, yeah. Yeah, I'll tell you about that one. We'll also look at personality, and personality types change over time. And what we have to do is we've got to keep up with the changes. The weather changes. Why doesn't our personality change? Well, it does. We just don't know how to measure it. We know how to measure the weather. We can measure it today. And thirdly, we can have a look at the energy centers or the chakras in the body. So we'll look at those 3 things today. So when I look at your stress levels, the first thing that I see is that your stress type is what's called logical stress. Now, logical stress for you is high. So at the time that you took this assessment, there would have been a couple of immediate challenges in your life. Logical stress relates to health concerns, financial stresses, work pressures, and uncertainties about the future. People who have logical stress often struggle for themselves, and they lose sleep over things. What didn't I do today? What's on my to-do list that I haven't done? And they ruminate about it all night. So knowing your type of stress, going back to Tuesday last week, what was happening Tuesday last week to trigger some of that stress?
I think the uncertainty about the future is probably there, and probably a bit of everything that you mentioned. I can resonate with. I am always thinking, what more can I do? I've got a lot that I want to achieve in a short amount of time, and so how am I going to get there? Where do I start? What action do I take? So I usually do the thing that I think I need to do, and then sometimes I try not to beat myself up and go, well, what did I do today? And I look back and I go, oh, I did those 5 to 10 things. That's good. That's, for want of a better expression, that's better than nothing. So I've done some things to take me towards the goals that I want to achieve. But there's always things in the background. It's like, what about this? What about this? What about this? And as my wife would say, which you, I'm sure, are very familiar with, nothing happens without a sale. So those kind of things about generating those relationships and being able to help people in exchange for money as well. We use that as our form of currency to give us options and to do whatever. So look, mate, it could be all of those things and more. I could spend the next half an hour telling you about what I'm stressed about. But those are the ones that spring to mind.
Beautiful. For the signs and symptoms of logical stress, for people where it's the constant overthinking, it's the paralysis via analysis, it's anticipating all of these options. What are these things that are going to come at me and how am I going to handle it? And when we have logical stress, we're always looking for a logical solution. And it starts to drain our energy because it drains the mental reserves in the mind because we're always just looking for another answer. However, with logical stress, what we've always got to be mindful of is we can create worst case scenarios. Sometimes it's easy to slip into the doomsday and the Armageddon type thinking. One of my clients, he says, Daniel, I'm high logical stress. It's like the end of the world. And I've created all these scenarios in my mind. And that's specifically what happens for people who experience logical stress. And for me, I have logical stress also, and I know that I overthink things. But when I remember my stress type, I say, oh, this makes sense. I'm looking for logical solutions. But sometimes there's not always a logical solution for things. And that can be a bit of a inner conflict. Yep. So for others who are experiencing logical stress, when we think too much, then we start to have mental health disorders. It leads to feelings of anxiety. It can also lead to chronic stress and a compromised immune system. So normally after we experience a lot of chronic stress, a couple of weeks later, we end up with a cold or a flu. And we think to ourselves, how did I get a cold or a flu today? Well, it's not about today. It's what was triggering it a couple of weeks ago because we compromise our immune system. So that's logical stress. And there's three types. We have logical stress. We have accumulated stress. Accumulated stress is the type of stress that builds up over time. But what we do is we compartmentalize it. We repress it. We push it under the rug. And then we have sentimental stress. And that's to do with everything with a heartbeat. And so some people don't care about money. They don't care about their job. What they care about really is people. And they lose sleep over other people's problems. So that's stress. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. It does make sense. And dealing with that on a logical and an emotional level also makes a lot of sense. Where you can name it, you can tame it. Also resonates. This show helps others, and it also helps me as well as a reminder for those kind of things as well. And also, if you can regulate your self-talk, what I found, regulating my self-talk really helps me deal with that. Now I can name it, that logical stress, and I can have a good talk with myself. And one of my mantras that I did learn a long time ago from the seminar I went to is one of my mantras to myself needs to be, lighten up, Johnny.
Now, it's interesting you talk about that self-talk. When we get to the energy centers, I want to touch on that because when we look at your throat chakra, it's really balanced. Number one, it helps you have that beautiful voice, but also you'll have words of wisdom. And I'm going to explain that connection between your throat and your crown chakra.
Well, that's really good to know because for a long time I thought my voice might have been a result of all the Benson and Hedges that I used to smoke in the 90s.
Being H Reds, eh? The Winnie Blues. Yeah. All the strong ones.
Luckily, those days are gone. But sorry, I don't want to diminish what you're talking about, but I just had to throw that in there, Daniel.
Well, I remember in the 90s and the 2000s, I'd do the same thing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I was. I didn't get the nickname Johnny Rockstar for nothing, but again, those days are gone. It was more about my partying abilities than my musical abilities. This is interesting, the turn this conversation has taken. So we started off, we're imparting a lot of great knowledge about yourself and things that you've learned and what you're up to, which is absolutely sensational. I feel like the tide's turned a little bit, and I'm the one getting the interview, but I like it. Let's keep rocking and rolling.
Well, as they say, leaders go first. I wrote a book. I've written many books. I think I'm up to my 21st book now. And in my book, Win Sales Now, I said that we have to incorporate what's called the When Harry Met Sally model of selling into our businesses. And I think if anybody's watched the movie When Harry Met Sally, we remember her having the orgasm in the restaurant. And all the heads turn and say, I want what she's having. Yeah. And as a leader, we have to go first. If we have a transformation, our followers will say, I want what you're having. And so, yeah, thank you for going first, John. I appreciate that.
And when I discover something or a penny drops for me about something or I hear a piece of gold, I love it for myself. And then my next reaction and my next thought is, other people need to know this. How can we impart that knowledge for other people to get the benefit of it?
Yeah. You've got an interesting personality trait, and we have a look at 9 different personality styles. And what your personality style wants is that you seek power. You seek control.
Nice. I'm going to tell my wife that after.
Good. Yeah. Tell her who the boss is. And you're also very connected to your body. Some people say, I come from the head, I come from the heart, I come from the gut. You're very much gut-centered. Mm-hmm. And one of your personality traits is that what you do better than most people is you're a very strong relator to people. You understand people at a very intimate level. Also, what you have to learn in your personality trait is to master the emotions of anger and frustration. Yeah, definitely. And then the fear that your personality type has to deal with is the fear of separation. So your personality type is called the peacemaker. And there's famous people around the world. David Beckham, he's a very famous peacemaker and is a billionaire. The Dalai Lama is a peacemaker, and Queen Elizabeth II also has the peacemaker characteristic.
Daniel, you've just put me in this group of people that's making me, it's like I'll be walking on air after this interview. Yeah, love it.
Well, we need more of you, and it's the perfect personality trait for the type of business that you're in, because it's all about getting along with people. And I've met coaches who don't understand people. I've met consultants and trainers who just don't understand people. Now, they could become good lecturers at a university, and that's probably where they're better suited. But we need relators when it comes to coaching, because we're making a transformation within. We're bringing that greatness out. That's not the job of the school. It's not the job of the boss. It's not the job of the university. It's the job of the coach. It's John's job. So for you, when people meet you, they're going to learn very quickly that you're people-oriented. You have a great love for people. When you meet people, you have a very high level of tolerance, high levels of empathy, high levels of patience. Also, that you're also very emotionally sensitive. One, you're sensitive to your own emotions, but you're also sensitive to others, and you can start to cater for their needs. And this is what the peacemaker does best. They understand people. And for you, which is a conflict to your stress style, oftentimes we have an angel on one shoulder and a devil on the other. Your stress style is always looking for a logical solution. But the peacemaker, the angel on the other side, says, let it unfold naturally. Like our friends in the Muslim community say, inshallah, it's God's will. What will be, will be. Yep. So you've got this phenomenal personality type that is great for the type of work that you do.
Thank you. Well, it's good to get that feedback and that positive reinforcement. And I'm resonating with a lot of the things you're saying, and especially with the action that I'm taking. Sometimes I need to tell myself, control what you can control, let go of what you can't, and do what you think needs to be done. Don't beat yourself up about what you haven't done, or just don't beat yourself up at all. And like you say, what will be, will be. Because I really, especially in the last couple of years, really started taking that on, because it's a bit like if I do a keynote speech, I can have to catch myself getting anxious and caught up in some of the negative talk. Is it good enough? Are they going to like it? All this kind of stuff. And then that takes away my enjoyment of the process of preparing. And then I say to myself, it's got to be fun. And remember, John, you enjoy this. So cut that crap and enjoy the process, have the trust, do what you need to do, and what will be, will be. And, as they say, you either win or you learn. So, all these philosophies and mantras really have to be walking the walk on those. And that this kind of business also forces me in a good way to be living those so I can help others.
The peacemaker personality type is a conduit. It's about bringing two different parties together, and you're the person who can make it happen. And that's because you understand the needs of other people, and you can communicate to each party, whether it be through a keynote speech from leadership to the team. It's helping each side make sense. And because you're so emotionally sensitive, you can communicate the emotional component, because it's very easy for us to argue about things that are black and white. And one of my mentors, Dr. Edward de Bono, he would always say, yes, you can talk about the facts, but you've also got to talk about the feelings. And it's only once you can blend and mesh those two together that you become a powerful communicator. So with your logical stress type, you can bring the facts. You understand the logical component. And the peacemaker brings the heart to the conversation. So people make sense up here, and it makes sense in the heart as well. That's what I see here for your stress type and for your personality peacemaker.
Nice. Now, remember, Rise and Thrive listeners, that this was from a 90-second recording that I did from the site to get this evaluation. That is also available for you. You know, you can hear in my voice and see me that I'm absolutely loving this.
There's no bias. There was no questions. All you have to do is you can count to 100, or you can read a script. It doesn't matter. There's no bias. And this was the big difference. Was back in 2016, we had to answer 40, 50, or 100 questions. But now we're just analyzing the voice, because hidden inside the voice are brainwave frequencies. And the big data, the machine learning, the AI technology connects the vocal vibrations to emotional patterns, personality types, and all different health and illnesses inside the body. And you know, one thing, John, which makes sense now, you mentioned about the smoking. And when we have a look at your energy centers, I think I understand why.
Because I used to love the fags too much. Thanks for explaining some of the how, because that was one of my first questions. I'm happy to do this. It's no skin off my nose to go onto a site. And I actually read the script too. I was quite happy to read the script. But as you say, you can, as long as you're talking and your voice is getting recorded, that's enough. But I wanted to read the script that was given to me on the site. And I kept thinking, how does this work? So thank you for explaining some of the how, because I get about the output, and that in itself is evidence to that it works, or that it's definitely something worth considering in yourself. Yeah, I didn't want to get caught up on the how, otherwise I would lose the benefit of the output. So there's a bit of trust there involved as well, which I was happy to trust.
If anybody wants to get caught up in the how, and you're a real geek for those things, there's a free book on my website called Use Your Ears for a Change. And that explains in depth all about the vocal biomarker technology and all the case studies. Whenever you use your phone and you say, "Hey Siri," that's vocal biomarker technology. If you've got an Android device and you say, "Hey Alexa," that is vocal biomarker technology. And one of the ways that we use it here in the hospital systems is we help doctors diagnose illnesses through a voice analysis. So we use it in medical fields, and there's more than 40 years of research into sound frequencies and the voice. So it's backed by heaps of data, and if people love that, they can go deep into the how in the book.
Great. And I'll have a link. There'll be some great links in the show notes here to access that book, also your website, and also the ability to do that 90-second exercise that I did to get the kind of output that we're talking about. Was there anything else of note that came about through that exercise I did?
Well, we look at three things. We look at stress. We've done that. We look at personality. We've done that. Now we want to have a look at the soul. So we say mind, body, and soul. And the third part of the assessment here is we look into the energy centers of the body. And a lot of people have heard of the 7 chakras. And this is what we're looking at now, is we're looking at the 7 chakras because there's more to us than meets the eye. You know, we're not just our mind. We're not just our body. There's a spiritual component to us. And when we look at the energy centers, it brings mind, body, and soul together. When we have a look at energy centers, it really reveals the secrets of our past. It's the blueprint of our body. It's also a glimpse into the future and what type of potential that we have within ourselves. And for people who are new to the 7 energy centers, these are 7 energy centers inside the body that are connected to major neural networks and nerve systems. And the technology is measuring the energy in there. So we can have a look at what's balanced and what's imbalanced. So that's the next step for you and I, John, to look into the soul.
All right, I'm happy to go there, and I did notice one of your. Well, I read it that where energy flows, where focus goes, which is James Redfield, and I know that's one of your sayings of note as well. And that was his book, Celestine Prophecy, was one of the first books I read to get me on a bit of a more of a metaphysical pathway and understanding.
Metaphysical and scientific, because sometimes with the metaphysics, we've got to rely upon just our feelings. However, one of my beliefs is that we've got to trust in science. And I know that in medicine, if you walked into a doctor's appointment and the doctor looked at you and said, I'm going to remove your testicles today, you'd say, hey, hold up. What do you mean? Well, I just by looking at you, we should remove the testes. You'd be like, hey, don't you want to do a examination first? Don't you want to put on that blue glove? Don't you want to do a diagnostic?
Or at least a finger in the date.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, hey, hello would be nice. And so when we use it, it's scientific, because when we're dealing with the mind, I believe that from my experience is that a lot of coaches just have too much opinion. It's just too much opinion of what they think they should do. And it's like if a doctor had an opinion and said, I'm going to remove your testicles, you'd say, come on, like, let's do a test first. Let's check the bloods. Let's do an x-ray. Let's do an ultrasound. And this is why I say trust in science. So when we look at you today, we're looking at not an opinion, because I don't know you. I haven't spent enough time with you. But the science reveals things to me that you won't even understand about yourself. But I want to unpack those. And for a lot of people at this stage, we're looking at things that they can't see. So the first thing that I noticed here was that your 7 chakras are really well balanced. So the first thing that it tells me is that whatever you're doing, whatever your personal practices are, whatever you're teaching your clients, they're not just working for your clients, they're also working for you. And it's so rare. If we have 6 out of 7 chakras imbalanced, 1,000 people were put through the medical system, 1,000 people who had strokes, all of them had 6 out of their 7 energy centers out of balance. Where you have 5 of your 7 perfectly balanced, almost 6 perfectly balanced. So I want to unpack those. The first thing that I can see here is that within yourself, you're going to feel very stable and secure. You're going to feel quite grounded in your life at the moment. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I have a great life. There's no doubt about that.
Yep. You've probably done a lot of work on removing limiting beliefs around family, around friends, and about yourself.
Yeah, one of the ones that I share on the show sometimes, and I'd like to share with you, is that I made a decision as an upset teenager that I'd never get married or never have kids. And then I forgot that I made that decision. And then doing some personal development work, that resurfaced, and I went, oh my God, I had no idea. I just thought I was going to be a bachelor all my life, and that was just my opinion. And then I realized, well, and I made another decision that I don't want to live by the decision of an upset teenager, or, that when I made that decision. And then that opened up a whole new world, and I'm happily married for 16 years and have a couple of kids, which would not have been available had I not done that work.
Well, when we look at the chakras, specifically the root, the sacral, and the solar plexus, it also gives us a glimpse into the imprint, into the modeling, into the socialization period. And when there's a lot of imbalances there's a lot of unresolved issues from the past. However, I can see here that yours are almost perfectly balanced. So it shows that a lot of those energetic things you've released.
Thanks. Yeah, I've done a bit of work on myself.
I can see it. It's working. I also see here in the sacral chakra, this is in relation to emotions and relationships. For you, at times, and I'd say at the time that you did this recording, is you started to feel some very intense emotions. Now, not crazy out of control, but intense emotions. And maybe even on the day, I think it was Tuesday last week at around about 1:30 p.m., you completed your report. Probably the night before, your sleep wasn't so good. Can you recall that?
It wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me. It's interesting how you talked about sleep and how important it was and it is in your life, and you make sure that where possible that your whole family is sleeping as much as they need to, because it's a solid foundation. And I know logically that I operate better with the more sleep that I have. And I'm a very light sleeper as well. So living in the house with the family, sometimes I don't get as much sleep for whatever reasons as I would like to, and I can't sleep in. I'm always awake by 6 or earlier, whether I want to or not. You know, you have a Sunday or you think, oh, I'm going to sleep in now, and then you wake at 6 and you go, that's how I am. And I love the mornings anyway, so that's all good.
Can I talk to you about sleep for a moment?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. When we look at your crown and third eye chakra, they're balanced. So it tells me that the pituitary and the pineal gland are functioning correctly. So you're going to have a appropriate amount of melatonin in the body, which turns into serotonin. However, the sacral chakra is a little bit overactive. So that demonstrates potential of in the future having some chronic fatigue. However, right. I think the problem when I look at it here is that the heart chakra is overactive. And normally when the heart chakra is overactive, we have a compromised immune system. So coming back to the cigarettes, when we smoke a lot in our younger years, we can damage the lungs and they don't ever fully recover. And specifically between the hours of 3 a.m. to 5 a.m., this is when the body is attempting to release grief. And this is when the lungs are at their peak function. So between 3 and 5 a.m. in the morning, do you find that you have some restlessness between 3 and 5 a.m. in the morning?
I usually wake up once or twice a night, and it can be a little earlier than that, but often around then.
So 3 to 5 has to do with the lungs. And if we've got a compromised immune system, if we've been a heavy smoker in the past, or if the body's trying to release the emotion of grief from past heartaches, then the body tends to wake us up because it's actually grieving. And so from a Chinese medicine perspective, the body's trying to get rid of the grief, but it can't. So that will also impact sleep, because with not enough sleep, if we have less than 6 hours of sleep per night, the average person is going to have an increased rate of stroke by about 300 to 400%.
Yeah.
Now, yours are balanced, you're fine, but most people get sick easy.
Yeah, I've also heard that scientifically we don't know why we have to sleep. Like, you've given us some reasons there. Well, we don't know why. I don't know what I'm trying to say there. I should have researched that a bit better. But have you heard that as well? That there's no, like, you could say to regenerate. Oh, look, I don't know. I'm talking about that. That might not make it to the final cut.
I've got a book coming out next week, and it's called Start with Sleep. And if we just look at sleep commercially, billionaires on average sleep 7 to 8 hours per night. And people like Jeff Bezos, he wants his top executives sleeping a minimum of 8 hours, because our brain needs so much energy to function. And Jeff Bezos, his executives are making decisions today that are going to impact the company 10 years from now. So they need a lot of processing power. If we think about a grand chess master who plays chess, sits in his chair, only moves the little things around on the board, a grand chess master will burn 6,000 calories per day playing chess. So we need a lot of restorative sleep, and it's very important for brain plasticity. In the sleep, the body starts to regenerate all the different organs. So, for example, from 11 a.m. at night to 1 a.m. in the morning, the gallbladder is working at its peak. From 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. in the morning, the liver is working at its peak. From 3 to 5, the lungs, and then the large intestine from 5 a.m. to 7. And so this is called a Chinese body clock. And during our sleep, all the restorative processes take place. It releases all of the growth hormones in the body, those testes we talked about, the testosterone, the growth hormones, the estrogen, all of those things are released during our sleep. So if people really want to learn more about sleep, I've got a free book coming out next week called Start with Sleep. And it goes down the rabbit hole of sleep. The more sleep we have, the better emotional management we have. Millionaires sleep 6 to 7 hours per night, but people who are living hand to mouth tend to sleep less than 5 hours. So sleep is actually very good for you commercially.
Really good points, Daniel, and I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on that book, and I'm sure our audience will be as well. This will come out live after the book's release, which is good for us because then our audience will be able to access it. When I haven't had enough sleep, I need to tell myself that get enough sleep tomorrow, and whatever you're concerned about today you'll feel a lot better about it. So sometimes I can have that awareness, even though I'm still experiencing that emotion of dread. But I know it's heightened because I haven't slept enough. So really interested in your book, and it's really helped me to have that understanding. But I'm glad your research or the analysis shows that at the time of taking that, and I was getting enough sleep. I've also cut out a few things that allowed me to sleep better. So I only have 1 cup of coffee a day instead of 3. I usually don't drink alcohol, which helps with sleep.
With 1 glass of alcohol, that will rob us of 4 hours of sleep. Yeah. 1 glass kills 4 hours of sleep. And it's the liver that processes the alcohol. And what a lot of people feel is they feel the alcohol's wearing off between 1 and 3 a.m. in the morning. And the body is agitated. The liver is agitated because it can't process the alcohol. But also as well with your personality type, the peacemaker, your style is more susceptible to the emotion of anger. So when we wake up between the hours of 1 and 3, the body's actually trying to process the anger out of the body. And some of my work here in Asia doesn't start till 9 o'clock at night. I might not start a webinar till 9 o'clock and I don't finish it till 11. And sometimes after I finish work, I'm human and I feel frustrated and I can't sleep. And that's because the body's trying to process, the liver is trying to process the anger during those times. And when I've been really frustrated and I've had a scotch, the sleep is ruined. But if you just have 5 bad nights of sleep consecutively, that's enough to put you in a pre-diabetic state. Yeah, right. Imagine that. 5 bad sleeps in a row, pre-diabetic. It'll also increase cardiovascular disease and potential heart attacks by 300 to 400%. So in my book, it's called Sleep Your Way to Better Health.
Yeah, I like that. I say to my wife, if sleeping was an Olympic sport, she'd be a gold medalist in multiple Olympics because she'll do anything to protect her sleeper to get more. So I must tell her after this that it's actually a magical thing and wonderful thing that she's doing because that is one of the foundations for greatness.
Yeah. We've got to have really good sleep hygiene. And sleep hygiene is all about preparing yourself for sleep. And if you're using a digital device, an iPad, a television, a mobile phone, before you go to sleep, that blue light is telling your pineal gland that the sun is still out. And the pineal gland will withhold the release of melatonin. So a lot of people are trying to fatigue themselves into sleep, but they're still watching their device. But the pineal gland says it's still light outside. And it's not until you shut that device down, it takes about an hour for the brain to relax and for the pineal gland to release the melatonin. So in sleep hygiene, we've got to consider things like the level of light in a room. We've got to consider the temperature. We've got to consider our pillows and our sleeping arrangements, but also the behaviors we have before sleep. One of the very best things that I learned about sleep was to play solitaire before you go to bed. Not on the phone, but on the old cards. Because what happens is the body releases a little bit of dopamine You're not on a digital device and you're thinking. So the brain's going through that natural rhythm of working, but it's also getting tired. So I find when I play solitaire and I listen to what's called immunosound frequency therapy before sleep, by 10 o'clock, I am out like a light. And then we go through our series of sleep cycles all the way up to about 7 in the morning. But if you would have told me about sleep 10 years ago, when I was working with Emirates Airline, my circadian rhythm was out. I was sick all the time. My wife had heart problems, and it was all because of a lack of sleep. When we work with the airlines, there's huge amounts of early deaths. Cancer rates are huge. Suicides are huge. And sleep is connected to physical, emotional, and mental health. People who are anxious sleep less. People who sleep less are more anxious. And it's a terrible cycle, but it starts with sleep.
Yeah, and there's the science to prove it, and there's also the experience to prove it. I bet you everyone listening knows how better they operate after they've had a good night's sleep. And thanks for explaining that device thing, because you often hear, don't get on your device before you go to bed. And I know it's easy to do, and there's occasions where I do as well. But the knowing the why that's not a good idea, and how you explained it, now because your body thinks the sun's still out and you're not ready to go to sleep yet. And a practical tip about what you can do before you go to bed. I've often heard if you can't sleep, do something boring like iron a shirt or do something like that, because you'll want to then go to sleep after that, and it'll make you sleepy.
Well, I think the biggest tip is that the bedroom should be free of business. And if husband and wife work together, if husband and wife work together, the bed becomes a negative anchor, because what do you argue about in bed? About money, about business. You talk about customers, you talk about invoices, and it becomes a negative anchor. That's got to be left outside. The bedroom has to be set up just for sleeping. And here in Asia, bedrooms are set up differently than in the West. The bedroom in a lot of Aussie homes is a focal point. You go in there and there's this beautiful big bed head. There's these 20 different types of pillows, these cashmere sheets, all of this lighting, this television, and it's so stimulating. Here in Asia, bedrooms are for sleeping. So our bedroom it's a lovely bedroom. It's just plain. You just walk in there, and the purpose of that room is for sleep. Yep. In Japan, the bedrooms are geared for sleep. There's no distractions in there. There's no televisions. There's no books. There's no significant lighting. It's just for sleep. And that's culture.
Really good aspect that, like you say, we don't often think about in the West. I can hear maybe a lot of our male listeners breathing a sigh of relief about having to deal with all those pillows on the bed. We don't need them, and they're a distraction, and they won't help us get to sleep because you just take them off the bed anyway.
I say to my wife, don't make the bed. So don't make the bed, just leave it. Now, people write books about, the first thing you got to do is make your bed. No, my grandfather was in the military, and that was important in the military. But making your bed doesn't make you a more disciplined person. Discipline comes in many different forms. There's some things that just are genuine time wasters, like putting pillows in place. But that's the vanity aspect of the bedroom. That's because it's a focal point. If you realized it was just for sleeping, you'd just keep it tidy.
I'm going to have a tough sell with that one, I think. But
talking about the men, if men want to have a better sex life, prioritize sleep. If the ladies want to have a better sex life, prioritize sleep. Because men who are sleep deprived suffer more erectile dysfunction, a more penile induration than anybody else, more premature ejaculation. So men, if you want to have a better sex life, you've got to learn to sleep more. Because if your organs aren't functioning correctly, you won't get the appropriate blood flow to the appropriate region of the body. And for ladies as well, if you sleep more, you'll release more DHEA into the body, and your sexual activity will be higher. You'll have a more regular period with less pain, and you'll also, with more sleep, which is good for both parties, is it releases anti-aging chemicals into the body. So husbands, if you want your wives to look younger forever, increase the sex life, anti-aging.
I love it. That's a motivation for more sleep if there was anyone. I bet you up until then everyone's going, yeah, I agree with Daniel. He's making a lot of sense. And I'm not quite sure if I can do it or if I'm motivated to do it. And you just came bang there with all the motivation we all need to make
And
sure
the
that
key
we
word
make some
came.
changes to get a better sleep.
Now, three more things about you.
Okay. All right. It's my favorite topic, so I'm not going to cut it short.
Number one, the heart chakra for you has way too much energy there. So recently, have you experienced any heartbreaks, losses, or disappointments? Are you grieving over any losses?
Yeah, I haven't had one immediately, and it's been 5 or 6 years. But the loss of my mother was massive for me and still is, and I think about her every day. And she's a part of my life, and in a good way. So that's the only thing I can think of. If there was any grief, maybe there's some residual there going on. That's all I could think of in that area.
Beautiful. So the heart chakra relates to love and compassion. And when we lose a loved one, time doesn't heal wounds. That's the first thing we've got to realize. Time doesn't heal wounds. And these imprints get caught up in the energetic body. And we can be grieving, but because we've repressed it or put it out of our awareness, it remains active in the energetic body. So whenever we have an overactive heart chakra, we know that there's been heartbreaks, losses, or disappointments. And we're actually still in that grieving cycle. And the thing about grief is not a weakness. Grief is just extended sadness. And when we love somebody a lot, when we care for them a lot, when we think about them on a daily basis, it remains active in the body. And what we have to learn to do is we have to learn to love the departed and move on from the grief. And once we move on from the grief, we can fully honor the departed. And here in Taiwan, one of the major things that we have is a very different concept to death. We say that 7 days after the death of the individual, that their soul can depart from the earth plane. And then every 7 days after that, for the next 49 days, it has the ability to leave the earth plane. But if we're grieving and we're still upset, then what we say is that the loved one sometimes doesn't cross over and they want to stay connected to us because we're grieving. And then only once a year, when we have what's called Ghost Month, then can the departed leave. So we have a different approach to it. Also, after death in our community, what the departed is encouraged to do is to drink what's called mompo tang. And that's the old lady's soup. And when you drink the old lady's soup, what it signifies is that you erase all memories from this lifetime and you return back to the soul energy. So in our culture, honoring the departed, we do it by praying for them for 49 days nonstop so that we can heal and release them. And then every year, we also honor the departed to make sure that they've crossed over. So from a Taiwanese perspective, we can still see that grief is most likely to be there for you still.
Yeah, and I like that way of honouring the departed as you do. And it did occur to me, I think, oh, holy shit, I hope I'm not stomping my mother across to the other side. Yeah, I'll take that on. Thank you. And yeah, really, really interesting. And that was the only thing that I could think of in terms of the heart there.
Yeah, beautiful. Now, the other 3 things for you, which are really balanced, is your throat chakra. Now, when we have a balanced throat chakra, we have an ability to speak clearly. What we say makes sense both logically and emotionally, but also the tonality of the voice. And after you had completed this, I then went to your YouTube channel, and the first thing I learned about you was that you wanted to be a disc jockey on the radio, and then you wanted to be on television. And then I heard the voice and I went, it makes sense. So your throat chakra is active, and it's also your tool. It's your tool now on hosting me on your podcast. It's the tool. Other people have hammers and shovels and washing machines and drying machines and irons. You have your throat. So that's balanced. The other 2 which are balanced here are your third eye chakra. And when I listen to you, you're not a man of knowledge. You're a man of wisdom. You have a lot of wise words. And when people have an overactive third eye chakra, they often mistake knowledge for wisdom. And they're two different things. I know people who can regurgitate things out of books and it's just knowledge, but they've never applied it and it's not wisdom. Where your words are wise, and I'm sure that you get a lot of feedback, not now, but for the years, that you're probably wise beyond your years. You probably tell somebody something that they've heard 1,000 times, but they say, John, I've heard this so many times in so many books, but the fact that you said it actually makes sense. Have you had that type of feedback before?
Yeah, I have, and it really fills my cup when I've known I've made a difference to someone, and that's what I feel my life purpose is, and so I feel like I'm fulfilling what I've been put here to do. It's wonderful.
Your crown chakra is also balanced, which is connected to wisdom and spirituality. So what it tells me that internally you've got a very solid peace of mind. You've got peace of mind, but you've also got a connection. And when we talk about the connection here, it could be, number one, it could be to a religious set of beliefs or to spiritual beliefs and a connection to God. And I can see that that's really balanced. And the where we are in the world right now, we have lost our connection to our gods. And religion has gone to the background, or the spiritual beliefs have gone to the background, and the dollar has become our new god. But in a world where people have an out of balance crown chakra, yours is almost perfectly balanced. So for peace of mind, what are you doing, and what's that connection to God that you have?
Yeah, well, because I was brought up as a Catholic. I went to a Catholic primary school and was an altar boy and all the things. And then I moved away from religion around high school time, things like that. And then I did start on a more of a metaphysical, spiritual path, having read some books by some greats in that area, including Deepak and James Redfield and Louise Hay and Wayne Dyer. I love lots of Wayne. And then so I started also to then think it doesn't matter what I label a power higher than myself, as long as I've got one in my life. And why would I be so arrogant to think that there isn't one? So and a lot of people get hung up on the labels, right? So what I've come to realize about myself is whether I call that the universe, whether I call that God, whether I just call that a higher power greater than myself, I can call on that in times and it brings me comfort. Sometimes it could be praying to that. Sometimes it could be talking to that. Sometimes it could be talking to myself. Sometimes it could be requesting, please, higher power, show me what I'm not seeing now. So those are the kind of things that I instill and I have in my life that really help me. It's really interesting that the analysis is showing that's uncovering that something that I use and live my life by, and that's helped me a lot.
It comes through really strong, and the reason why it's so important today is that after we're born, within about 7 to 8 months, we have these soft spots in our heads. Remember when your babies are growing up, they have a soft spot on the front of the head and the soft spot on the back. From a spiritual perspective, what we say is that's our connection to the universe, the connection to God, the connection to spirit. But once the platelets form inside the head, then that frontal, that soft spot closes. And in spirituality, and especially in Buddhism, they say that's the time of our life where we lose our connection to the source energy. And then most people never, ever reconsider that connection until a near-death experience or it's time for them to die. My grandfather, he was Roman Catholic. He was a bad boy. He'd done wild things in his life. And he knew he was going to purgatory. He knew he was going to hell. And so on his deathbed, he was reaching out to the priests. He was getting remarried to my grandmother. He was asking for forgiveness, because it's only at time of near-death experience or death that we tend to reconnect with the gods. So it's very unusual to have that in a world that worships the dollar. And you've got it. And out of thousands and thousands of these debriefs that I've done, it's very rare that we see somebody who's got a balanced crown chakra in today's world. So whatever you're teaching, whatever your daily practices are working, I encourage your followers to learn about that from you, because you've got that peace of mind, which is the number one thing. Brian Tracy wrote it about in his book, Maximum Achievement. The number one thing that all people are seeking in life, first and foremost, is peace of mind. And you've got something that 99% of the population don't have. But I bet you know how to share that with your followers.
I do, and thank you, because I've often been wondering whether I should. And now you're really helping me along my journey and some of the things that I'll consider and some of the actions that I'll take to make a difference to others. So I really want to thank you for that, Daniel.
My pleasure. John, the way that I explain it, when we don't have a balanced crown chakra, we feel alone in this world. We feel that the gods have punished us. We feel that the gods have left us. And a lot of people can't explain that. But that's how they really feel. They feel alone. They might be in a relationship, but they feel alone. They might be in a family, but they still feel alone in this world. And we all have to find a way back to God. And there's wonderful books out there by Neil Donald Walsh, Conversations with God, Celestine Prophecy. All of these books have been written, and it's the path that everybody walks down. But because we're so caught up with chasing the dollar for 40 or 50 years of our life, we forget about spirituality. But there is a higher source. I don't know what it is. I know there's a certain energy out there that guides us, but we've got to connect to it. And however you do it, whether it be through prayer or affirmation, once you find that, you get peace of mind. You believe that you are important. You start to believe that you aren't just 1 in 7 billion. You start to realize that, hey, I'm here for a purpose. The gods have given me special skills and knowledge and attitudes and a way of looking at the world that can add value. And if we get back to that, life gets really good.
Yeah, I agree. I used to get caught up in, is that really the truth? And then I thought, it doesn't matter, because if I believe it and it serves me and it makes me a better person and be a better person around other people, that's all that matters.
Is the sky blue?
Depends where you're looking from.
If we believe it's blue and it serves us, excellent. And Dr. Joe Dispenza always talks about the placebo effect. If you believe that you're destined for greatness, is that better than believing you're destined for failure? Because we attract what we think about most of the time. And we've all had that experience. We jump in the car and we go to work in the morning and we say, I don't want to be late. I don't want to get any red lights. I don't want to get caught behind any slow drivers. And what does the world give you immediately? Every red light, every traffic jam, wherever you are in the world. But when you get in the car in the morning and say, I'm going to have a wonderful day. I'm going to meet wonderful people. I'm going to engage with wonderful clients. I'm going to make an impact today. You don't even notice the traffic anymore. And even if you are stuck in it, you're thinking about other things. So whatever serves you, serves you.
I love it, Daniel. I could talk to you for days and days and days, and I feel like we're so aligned on so many things. It's been so wonderful, and I love doing this show because I get to meet people like yourself and have a conversation for greatness. If not for this show, I would have never had this experience, and it's just been so wonderful and amazing for me. I can't thank you enough for giving me your most valuable resource, being time. I know your time is highly in demand and you're out there impacting thousands of people around the world as well. And I love connecting with great people like yourself. All there is, I think, to say is thank you so much for being on the show, Daniel. It was certainly a conversation for greatness. You're welcome back anytime.
Thank you, John.